Hey, Mikey, I have a joke that will leave you laughing until you're hoarse. Get it?
Let's hear it before the laughter dies down.
Well, our guest today is a world champion barrel racer, which makes her extra special in my eyes. They're athletes that are like the Beyoncés of the sports world, all bling and badass.
Okay. Turbo, keep going.
And you know what they say about barrel racers. They can turn even the laziest horses into speed demons with a love for barrels. Okay, let me get to the real joke now. So my pal, Wiley Piemore, visited from Las Vegas in June, and we took him to the local rodeo. He had never been on a horse before, but he was feeling adventurous. When they brought out the legendary bucking bronco Scream Dream, everyone was in for a show. But then the organizers offered $10,000 to anyone who could stay on his back for 10 seconds. The local cowboys tried and failed, but Wiley stepped up and stayed on for over a minute. When they asked how he did it, he just said, "My wife's an epileptic." Okay, cue the hate emails. 3, 2, 1.
Oh boy, I did not see that punchline coming. Remember, folks, the hate emails go to Mr. Robin, and from now on, the jokes have to be approved by me.
Greetings, listeners. It is I, your slightly wannabe comedic co-host and all-around podcasting fool, Mr. Robin, coming at you digitally from Studio B here at the compound just outside of Fargo, Oklahoma. As always, I'm joined by my irascibly sinister, oh wait, that's actually me, though remarkably tolerant, particularly when it comes to Mr. Robin's nonsense, my co-host and all-around best collaborative partner, Mikkel Murray Robinson, also known as Mikey-on-the-Mic. Give a big howdy to our brilliant listeners, Mikey.
Well, howdy, brilliant listeners. Boy, do we have a treat for you.
Today, we have a special guest joining us on the podcast, Jeana Day. She is a retired school teacher who last taught here in Fargo schools, now known as Fargo Gage schools. But long before she took up teaching, she led a very competitive life as a professional rodeo barrel racer, where she gained fame as a world champion barrel racer at 20 aboard a horse named Poco Excuse. Beyond that, she was a 4-time reserve world champion. She was inducted into the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame in 2024. So let's give a big round of applause and podcast welcome to Jeana Day. All right. Enough with the clapping already. Welcome to the show, Jeana. We're very pleased to have you with us for today's podcast. Perhaps you could provide a little background on your life growing up on Day Ranch and how you got into the pro rodeo life.
It was a great life out there on the ranch, and my mom and dad, when they got married, amateur rodeoed, and mom ran barrels and dad ran rope calves, and my Aunt Helen Riley, mom's sister, ran barrels. So they had some rodeo in their blood. And in turn, when I was, 8 or 9 years old, something like that, my Aunt Helen had her old barrel horse was 19 at the time, called him Old Roany. He was a roan, in case you hadn't figured it out.
Yeah, okay.
And Aunt Helen thought Barb and I, my sister, Barbara Roberts, could riding and learn how to run barrels. So she gave us a few lessons and gave us old Roany, and off to rodeos we went. And amateur rodeo, not amateur, junior rodeos.
Junior.
At that time, it was junior rodeos.
Uh-huh.
And I tried doing a little bit of everything. I did some pole bending. Dad got a pole bending horse, and we ran barrels on Roany and did a little goat tying and that sort of thing. But I just gravitated towards the barrels. I didn't like pole bending. I didn't like goat tying. And so I gravitated towards the barrels. And my favorite thing in the whole world to do at that time was work cattle, was calf working season, when we branded and vaccinated and all the things you do to the calves. That was my favorite time of the year. I got to miss school. And
it's always a good
all
one.
the family helped each other, and that was my favorite. But then once I got started barrel racing, I kind of had a new favorite thing.
Right.
And when I was 12, Dad bought a horse for my Uncle Leroy Day, a 4-year-old, and he bucked.
Uh-huh.
Uncle Leroy couldn't ride him. He bucked. And my dad couldn't ride him. He bucked. So unbeknownst to me why Dad put me on him, it made me wonder. You know, he put me on the bucking horse.
Yeah.
But Excuse was, I think it was the size for one thing. Excuse was small, about 14.1 hands tall and about 1,000 pounds. So he was really too small for those men. And I was skinny Winnie then, just a little bit of nothing. And he never tried to buck me off. Now he would jump and kick and what we called crow hop.
Right.
And he would do that with me for a little bit when I'd first get on him, but I could ride it out of him. And Dad told me to train him on poles, which I've already said wasn't my favorite event, because he wouldn't be fast enough for barrels because he was, he was too small. And Excuse hated the poles as much as I did, because when the poles would weave in the wind, he would jump sideways and which wasn't very pleasant. And so I started working him on barrels. And I didn't know how to train a barrel horse. I'd never trained a barrel horse, but Roany had trained me how to run barrels. So I figured I would just walk Excuse around the barrels to cool him out after I had ridden him in the pastures and stuff. And I just kept walking him and walking him and walking him. And I'd walk him in the path that Roany took us around the barrels. And then I started trotting him. And I knew when I started loping him, I thought he needs to set and turn. So I would stop him and then take him around the barrel and just kind of did it by common sense of what I'd learned from Roany. And I finally put some speed with it. And I asked Dad, I said, why don't you come down here and watch Excuse for a little bit? Because I hadn't told him what I was doing.
Yeah.
And Dad came down, was on the fence down by where I had 3 sets of barrels, one out in a pasture, one between the house and Highway 34, and then one up by the corrals. And Dad came down by the one by the corrals and was sitting on the fence, and I kicked Excuse out and made a run on him, and Dad about fell off the fence. And it wasn't 2 weeks till he had me entered in the Winoka Amateur Rodeo. Never went to a jackpot, never went to a junior rodeo on him. The first place I ever run him was Winoka Rodeo. And we walked into the arena. He had his ears flapped out. People giggled, which hurt my feelings something fierce.
Yeah.
But when he saw that barrel, he knew, and away we went. And he smoked them, and I don't remember. I think we placed. I don't remember if we won it or just placed. I think we just placed. And so after that, we went to amateur rodeos, went to some good junior rodeos, it was the SCA rodeo, Southwest Cowboys Association rodeos. And then I got my Girls Rodeo Association permit. and went to some pro rodeos on him after about 3 years of amateurs and junior
I see.
rodeos.
Okay.
And that's how I got started.
And how long after you made that jump to the professional ranks were you able to, well, as I recall, you got your world championship when you were 20 years old. And I think
Yes.
that's really remarkable.
I made my first national finals rodeo when I just turned 15.
Okay.
And I was born in 1954. And then in 1969, I filled my permit in the fall with the Girls Rodeo Association, which is now the Women's Professional Rodeo Association, the WPRA. But back then we were Girls Rodeo Association. And I filled my permits. So Dad said, well, let's go ahead and finish going to the fall rodeos and get your card. I didn't know they had a Rookie of the Year award, or I wouldn't have yet. I would have waited and done that the next year in 1970. And so 1970 was the first year that I rodeoed full time to professional rodeos.
Okay.
And made the finals the first year I rodeoed.
Wow. Great. And just to kind of give this a timeline, what years were you active on the pro rodeo circuit?
1969 through 1975. And at the National Finals Rodeo of 75, I was pregnant with my son, Brian. I had gotten married in 74, and I was pregnant with Brian. So after the finals, we just turned Excuse out, and Brian had some health issues when he was born. He was full term, but only 19 inches long, but only weighed 3 pounds and 15 ounces.
Oh, wow.
He was starved. My placenta was too small.
Yeah.
And we don't know why.
Yeah.
And so he was in the hospital a month to get his weight up. And then he was his immune system wasn't good. So I couldn't get right back on Excuse like I had planned. I had to stay home with Brian. And he wasn't able to travel. So that kind of stuck a fork in my rodeo career.
Yeah. And so there was a period after Excuse died that you just didn't ride anymore, but you did come back after 7 years or so.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that would have been in the 80s then when you returned back to the...
Yes, it was in the 1984.
Okay.
Was when I made a comeback. I had got divorced and went to work at Dresser Atlas, a wireline service company in Woodward. Sure. And worked there for several years. But then the oil field in the 80s went kaput. So I thought, well, I got to have a way to make a living, you know. And the one thing I knew how to do was train barrel racing horses. So I put an ad in the GRA paper, and I got this little black horse to train and called him Peanuts. And he was a little bit like Excuse in the sense that he would buck a little bit. And he'd kick his heels up occasionally. So I rode the fire out of him. And the people thought they came to see him and they thought I was mistreating him because he was so in shape. I won't say thin because he wasn't thin. He was just solid because we rode up and down sand hills every day to keep him from jumping and kicking. And then I did him the same way I did Excuse. I would cool him out by walking around the barrels. That made that barrels relaxing to him. That was where he got to let down and relax and just walk around the barrels after I'd rode him up and down sand hills. So we took him down to Dr. Fred Rule, and he checked him over, and he told him, he said, there isn't anything wrong with this horse. He's just in excellent condition. And so about 2 or 3 months later, it was Mitch Harris from Eric, Oklahoma, who is now deceased. He got He got murdered.
Oh,
But
boy.
yeah, and his wife, she decided she wanted a seasoned open horse. So they asked if I'd want to buy Peanuts. Well, I already knew what he could do. I had him far enough along that he loved the barrels as much as Excuse did, but was faster and quicker.
Mm.
And so we bought him. Now, Dad bought Excuse for $300. We did give $4,000 for Peanuts, which seemed like a lot of money at the time, but I told Dad, I said, he's going to be worth it. And then I started going to barrel racing futurities, which is for 4-year-old and younger horses, in 1984.
Mhm.
And once again, everybody there thought I was crazy because I never went to a jackpot. We really didn't have jackpots up here.
Yeah.
And I wasn't familiar with really what I should do. So I just showed up at a futurity. And they have exhibitions where you pay just a little bit, where you can do whatever you want on the barrels, walk or trot or lope or run or whatever. And so I did 3 or 4 exhibitions on him and showed him the arena. And then when the go-round came, I ran, and I won money at that futurity. I won some pretty good money.
Nice.
Yeah.
And the photographer, Kenneth Springer, who's dear friend, he still talks about it. How I came in there, won money, hadn't even taken him anywhere. That was his first place to run.
No, that's interesting. So it almost seems like to me that sometimes the bond and how you work with the horse and stuff kind of plays into the success of the run. Sounds like a little bit to me, which is interesting. I mean, just like we connect with other animals, I mean, I have different connections with my animals that I feel like when you're in competition, that definitely takes you over the top when you're in sync with that animal and you're running them, which is cool. So did you make your money back on him pretty fast?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because we started winning at those futurities, and Fort Smith, Arkansas is one of the biggest futurities at that time. And we came in second or third. There was some really good horses, and we came in second or third. I can't remember which it was. Anyway, we won several $1,000s there. So I won. I used to have all the records, and I cannot find them anywhere. But I won some good money that year on him at futurities.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your dad's probably like, you were right, Jeana.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
We partnered on him.
Yeah.
Dad and I were partners and Mom on Peanuts. And then his 5-year year, at that time you went to derbies. And I won some derbies on him, so I started entering a few pro rodeos on him, just around close, to get him conditioned and used to going to them, and then hit the road that was in 85. I hit the road in 86, and he was doing really, really, really good at the pro rodeos. And we were in the top 15 in the standings. And we were driving from San Angelo, Texas to Phoenix, Arizona all night. And which that's a common thing in rodeo. You drive all night everywhere you go, from rodeo to rodeo to rodeo. And the trailer kept rocking. And we stopped I said, Peanuts, or somebody back there needs to go to the bathroom. So we stopped. And when we backed him out of the trailer, he just fell down.
Oh, no.
And he was colicking. He had the colic. Yeah. And we gave him a shot of Banamine and something else. Katrina had stuff that she knew to give him when they had colic, and walked him and walked him and walked him. And then he was walking pretty good. So we loaded him up and went on to Phoenix. But when I unloaded him at a friend's house where we were going to stay, he was still showing signs of discomfort and colic. Right. So we got a vet. He put oil down his nose into his stomach, and worked with him a little bit. But he told me, he said, I just don't like the way he's acting. I think you need to be at a surgeon's just in case he goes south,
Mhm.
Right.
So he called and we loaded up and drove all the way around Phoenix, which takes forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the traffic, oh my God. We got to the surgeon and he went to do a rectal on him and pulled out, didn't go ahead and do it. And a little bit he went in to do the rectal. When he pulled his arm out, there was blood all over it. Well, I had never had a sick horse like that. In all the
Mhm.
years that
Mhm.
my whole life I'd been around horses and I hadn't had a horse colic or be sick. And so to me, you stick an arm up there, it's going to have blood on it.
Yeah.
But come to find out, that's not normal.
Right.
And I called my vet, Dr. Rule, in Elk City, and he'd confer with that vet. And it was just a disaster from day one. Evidently, Peanuts had started to strain when he started to do a rectal and he pulled out. Well, he should have just left him alone because his signs of being colicky were getting less and less.
Uh-huh.
But he decided to go ahead and do the rectal and forced it.
Right.
Oh.
And that's what happened.
Oh.
And he did a colostomy on him to let the puncture heal. And he didn't do the standard care for a rectal tear. In the vet books, there's a standard care. He did nothing of the standard care.
Mhm.
And 3 surgeries, and a month later, Peanuts died. So that was the end of, and at that point, I rode some futurity colts. I kept training some futurity colts,
Mhm.
but I had a 3-year-old filly, and to this day, I don't know why she flipped, but she flipped with me. We was just riding around, and
Uh-huh.
I wasn't even doing anything, just easing around visiting,
Mhm.
and she just flipped and landed right beside me. When that saddle hit the ground right beside me, I thought if she'd have landed on me, I was either dead or busted up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought I needed college education. So I loaded her up, went to mom and dad's and told them, I said, I need to go to college this fall. So I did. I went to Weatherford and
So were you 30 then? Or?
no, well, let's see. That would have been in 86 or 7.
Okay.
And I was born in 54, whatever that is.
Okay. 38.
32.
There you go.
I was
Yeah.
32. I went to college.
You're quicker on the math, but you were a math teacher.
I bet I
so-
got a math degree. But I have to tell you, calculators ruin you.
Yeah, they do. I agree.
On simple math,
Yeah.
you're like, huh?
Yeah.
But anyway, I rode horses for just a little bit at college and then realized that I needed to dedicate myself to my education.
Yeah.
And I had to work to provide for myself. And it was too hard to keep the horses rode and do what I needed to do at college. So I quit riding.
So you, as they say, hung up your spurs.
I hung up my spurs and I can't find them. I don't know what I did with them.
So once you got the math degree, then you went on to become a teacher?
Yes.
Did you ever go back to writing after you started teaching?
No.
No.
Never did. Life just got to where I was so busy. When you teach, people don't realize how many hours a day it
Yeah.
takes to be a teacher.
Right.
Yeah.
And summers, you aren't off.
No, and I know that you're not teaching, but there's a lot that you're still doing, and there's a lot. I mean, I for one went to summer school one summer and saw a lot of my teachers there devoting their summers to summer school, which I appreciate because I was kind of told you're going to summer school or, I don't feel right about passing you on and it was just one subject. I struggle in math.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the math teacher over here. Math's really hard for me. So I had to go to summer
English
school.
is very hard for me.
See, and that's good. I'm good for that. That's how my husband feels too. He's really good at math and English. It's a struggle.
Yeah.
I don't know. Robin doesn't seem to be bad at math though.
I have to think about.
You do have to think, okay, that makes me feel a little better. But
And calculators are my friend. Right? So,
they're mine too, but I know what you mean. So,
it's interesting that I was just, as you were saying all that, I was kind of drawing a parallel to a friend of mine out in Washington State. Very sort of similar background. I mean, she never rodeoed, but she got divorced, went to college, became an algebra teacher in middle school. And on the side, she had built a farm, and it installed her own arena inside in the farm that was covered, and was raising American paint horses, I think. But she kind of found herself in much the same predicament that you had said you were trying to avoid, which was, you go to school and you're there all day, you're beyond that. She'd have to come home, take care of her animals, and it really wore on her.
Yeah. It's hard to balance.
Yeah.
And that's why I retired when I did, is because Mom is 90 now. She was 88 at the time, and she was just needing to go to doctors more often in Oklahoma City and needing some extra help. And I found it was taking away from my school time.
Sure.
And I thought, I have to make a decision here. I can't do both.
Yeah.
And so family comes first. So I would have kept teaching, except I needed to help Mom.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and that's commendable for sure. And you'll be happy that you did that and spent the time with your mom, which brings us to a question. Are you out there back on the farm where you grew up, or?
Well, Mom sold the home place 21 years ago, and we kept 160 acres in the southwest corner of it, right on Bowling Springs Road.
Okay. And
I put a house on that 160 acres. So I'm still living on a small piece of the home place.
That's cool.
And I love living in the country.
Yeah.
And I got me a herd. I got 6 cows.
There you go. Hey.
Yeah. And they're half Red Angus and half South Pole.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And I love the South Pole, and I'm hoping to eventually get where I've got South Pole cows straight.
Sure.
But they're more Gentile.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're docile.
Yeah. So you're not, but you're no longer herding cattle from horseback.
No. I have found it's cheaper to hire the work done than it is to buy a good horse and keep the horse all the time.
Yeah.
That you just ride once in a while.
Right.
I miss horses.
Yeah.
Something fierce.
Of course.
I miss the smell.
Oh, yeah.
The smell of a horse I miss. But, sometimes you've got to put logic above your heart.
Yeah, that's always hard.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I did have another question that kind of goes back to when you were rodeoing. Was there any specific ones that kind of stuck out to you that were very memorable moments in your career? The ones that maybe were your favorite to go to, or some fun stories about an experience? I'm sure.
Sydney, Iowa was my favorite rodeo. And Sydney's a real small town.
Uh-huh.
The people were so nice, and they had a big 4-H group.
Uh-huh.
And they had a building on the rodeo grounds, a big building that they would, the mothers of the 4-H kids would fix fresh fried chicken, mashed potatoes and gravy, fresh corn that was grown there,
yeah,
and fresh sliced tomatoes.
Oh,
And they did that
No
every
wonder.
day of the rodeo.
Oh,
And they
wow.
had a bell on top of the building that would ring when they were serving.
When the dinner was being served.
But what was bad was the cowboys thought that the funnest thing in the world was at night was to climb up there and take the ringer out of the bell. And I know they got really tired of that, but it was the cowboys thought that was pretty fun. But I love that rodeo. It was like, well, you're just getting home cooked meals
Yeah.
and on the road, because I averaged 75 to 80 rodeos a year,
Oh, wow.
and usually about 70,000 miles a year.
Uh-huh.
And so and back then we didn't even have fast food.
Right.
We ate at truck stops.
Right.
Oh, that was tough sometimes. Now there's a lot of good truck stops.
Sure.
Don't get me wrong, but
you don't
it
know
gets
them
old.
sometimes either, too, when you're out on the road. You don't
Yeah.
know there's maybe 5 truck stops in a town and one has good food and you're not from there and you don't know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm sure that would still get old either way.
I can't. There's an old cowboy that has a saying about if the food's bad, and I can't say it, but
Oh, go ahead.
You can say it.
says you just eat to make a turd anyway. When we get in a truck stop that wasn't very good, that's
Yeah.
what he would say. And I was probably 15, 16 when he said that, and I have never forgot it.
one of those things that sticks with you. Yeah.
So anytime I have a bad meal, that goes through my mind.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
That's a way to look at it. That's for sure.
Oh, let's see. What's some other rodeos? Back then, there wasn't hundreds of contestants like there are
Right.
now. So there might be 50 barrel racers entered
Mhm.
or 60.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes there wasn't that many. And so you'd have 2 go-rounds at a 4-day rodeo sometimes. Now, if they had that many girls, it'd be a 1 go-round deal. But if they didn't, it would be 2 go-rounds. So it's the same way in the Cowboys events. So everybody was at most of the rodeos for 2 or 3 days, or sometimes the 4 days, depending
Right.
on how you drew up. We became close family. You know, we were on the road away from some of our family
Yeah.
because Mom and Dad would take turns going with me. They sacrificed a lot rodeoing with me because they had the ranch, and Dad would take me a lot. And Mom would stay home and she could run the ranch just like any man, because Grandpa had 3 daughters, no boys, and they were raised really, really, really poor because he was trying to get cattle built up to have his own place someday.
Mm-hmm.
And he worked them like men when they were little.
Mhm.
Yeah.
In fact, it was pretty rough.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine.
And she was having to carry 100-pound bags when she was a 10-year-old.
Wow.
And it didn't matter how she got it there. She had to, if he said, move those sacks to wherever,
She was going to do it.
she was going to do
Yeah.
it, But so Mom and Dad, and my mom, when she would take us, those young cowboys, they'd call her Mom,
Mm-hmm.
and they'd show up because we ended up having a gooseneck that had living quarters in the front.
Right.
And pulled 2 horses. There was 2 horse stalls on the back of it, and then the rest was living quarters. So that way we finally got home cooked meals.
Mm-hmm.
And we always had company because the cowboys, those young cowboys that come over there, Mom, what you cooking? If they had time.
Yeah.
And so it's different now.
Yeah.
It's not
I'm
that
sure.
it's not that close knit. Yes, they've got friends, but
Sure.
it's friends they haul with, but they're going from rodeo to rodeo to rodeo to rodeo. Whereas we would be somewhere for a few days and
Right.
become very close.
Yeah.
And I miss that.
Yeah. I can imagine. That's one of those things when you do something like that and you have the time to get to know people, I feel like can grow culturally as well, because you're meeting people from different places
All over the United
all
States.
over. and learning different
we had
things.
cowboys from Australia.
Oh, wow. So even
and
overseas.
Canada, and yeah.
And you're all there doing kind of the same thing, and it's less about I'm here for myself as I'm here for I'm here to try to win something, but we're there for the camaraderie as well. Yeah, that's the word I'm thinking of.
We didn't have equal money. The girls didn't.
Uh-huh.
The year I won the world, I won less than $12,000 for the year.
Wow.
I won the world.
Wow.
And so, of course, everything was cheaper. I paid my expenses, but without my mom and dad, I couldn't have done it because they bought the trailer and the pickup.
Right.
Now I bought the gas and I would pay the expenses and my entry fees and all that. But it was not easy. And now I was on the board of directors that fought for equal money. I was on the board of directors of the Women's Professional Rodeo Association 11 years. And in the 80s, we finally took a stand. And it was hard because, the fear of losing rodeos. We lost a few at first, but I would say they probably all came back before very long because they realized the quality of barrel racing wasn't the same if they didn't go to WPRA.
Right.
And so we got equal money. But a funny story.
Yeah.
I was at Calgary, which now Calgary pays $50,000 to win it.
Oh, wow.
Uh-huh.
Which it didn't do that back then. It was just a normal regular rodeo, but it was fun to go up there, and there was a mountain creek that ran through the rodeo grounds. And
Oh, cool.
we could stand our horse in it. It was good for their legs.
Yeah.
And it was a fun place to go. I liked going to Calgary. Well, one of the years I went, I won it, and they give a bronze, and a really nice bronze. And I think that was the first year I went. The second year I went, I tied for the first. So I was tied for the bronze with a Canadian girl. Well, I wanted to run it off it's a $2,000 bronze.
Mm-hmm.
And because the way I know is the artist called me wanting to buy it back from me because she somehow didn't end up with one of them. And I felt terrible because I was like, I can't buy me a bronze. So I have to say no to selling it back to you. But I'm in Canada. They won't let us run it off. They want to flip a coin. So I'm in Canada against a Canadian girl, a Canadian flipping a Canadian coin. Who do you think won the flip?
The Canadian.
Yep.
Yep. Well, what were you to do, right? Your hands were kind of tied. You're like, well,
He flipped for the bronze,
yeah.
and I was like, we could at least use an American coin.
Yeah.
And they looked at me like I was nuts.
Sure. Oh, man. Well, I love that you brought some of the stuff you got just last month, and I feel like we should talk a little bit about that too, because I got to meet you because you had approached the museum about getting a picture from our McDonald collection that was taken, like a portrait of you, to use in this. And I'm so happy that you reached out and that we got to connect that way. But just July 13th, you were inducted in the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame in Colorado. So I think you should tell us a little bit about that experience. And
so exciting. It was such a shock and so exciting. 45 years ago, the PRCA built this Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame and American Cowboy Museum.
Uh-huh.
You'll always leave that part off.
Oh, yeah, because it's so long. They just dropped the last part.
And so they started inducting cowboys because it was built by the PRCA. But in 2016 or 17, they decided, and I wonder if when people went through there, if they didn't ask about the barrel race, because the barrel racing is a very popular event.
It is. It's one of my favorite. Obviously, I love bull riding, but barrel racing, I mean, it's fun
fast,
to watch. Yes.
And it's just a good event.
It is.
And so they started including the WPRA into their inductions. So they've just been doing that since 2017, maybe.
Okay.
And I think I was the 10th barrel racer inducted. So they treated us so special. I've got this beautiful buckle.
Yeah, that's very beautiful.
That's inductee, and it has their emblem on it and my name, and then a bronze of this is a duplicate of the big, huge bronze that's outside the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame.
Okay.
And it's of a saddle bronc rider. But that's why a barrel racer has a saddle bronc rider bronze, is because that's the emblem of the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame. But anyway, we went up there and they treated us like queens and kings, and had a banquet and a ball the Friday night. And they presented us. I didn't bring it to show you. I probably should have. I wasn't even thinking. But they presented us with a really nice jacket, like a bomber type jacket that has the emblems on it and heavy. So it'll be a nice winter coat if I decide to wear it.
Right. You'll have to wear it some special places, I think.
If I know I'm not going to get it dirty.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So they presented us with the jacket and introduced us. We didn't have to say anything. Then the next morning at 7:30, we had rehearsal. At 8:00, we had a breakfast that the WPRA gave. And then at 9, we met with the media. Then at 10 was the induction ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really nice. They did a video of us. They had a video made and narrated. And when they did mine, I was like, that's my speech. I thought, what am I going to do?
What am I going to say now?
Yeah, what
they stole the words right out from under me.
And then we had to get when they introduced us, we were to say a few words, and I said more than a few. And I had to tell them about Excuse, because we started the most prestigious and coveted award that they give at the National Finals Rodeo. Is called the Horse with the Most Heart.
Uh-huh.
Our family started that award when Excuse got killed. Okay. Dogs ran through a barbed wire fence.
Oh.
And he got astraddle the barbed wire fence and went down the hill, and it mutilated him. Oh. He didn't survive. And so I trained him when I was 12.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And that was my best friend.
Yeah.
It was, and it was a hit in the gut for the whole family.
I'm sure.
We lost him. Dad called me and couldn't talk. He just started crying.
Oh.
And I'd never heard my dad cry before. So it was tough when we lost Excuse. So the family, we started, and we have it where the top 15 barrel racers at the finals that year vote on a horse at the finals that they think has the biggest heart. Because Excuse, that's what he was known for. Because he wasn't bred to be a barrel horse. He didn't look like a barrel horse. But he could run, and he loved it. And the year I won the world, we were at the Pikes Peak Bus Rodeo, which is what was going on when we were at the induction. And we'd stopped at home for 2 or 3 days. And then when we got ready to load him up, he had a cut above his eye, left eye, I think it was. And so we took him to the vet at Sealing, and he sewed it up, and away we went. And I ran him that night at Colorado Springs, and we placed. And the next morning I go to feed him, and he was laying down in the stall, and his head was huge and his eyes were swollen shut, and he couldn't get up. So we called the vet. He came out, he opened that incision up, cut up an incision above it, and ran gauze through it and worked it, and got over a pint of pus blood out.
Yeah.
So once we got that pressure relieved, he followed me by my voice to get in the trailer, and we got him home. And the vet here at Seedling couldn't figure out what was going on. He said, that was a clean cut. I don't understand, And so we heard about Dr. Fred Rule in Elk City, and that's how we got started going to him. He's known for being a good horse vet. I think he's retired now, But anyway, we got him down there, and Fred said, just leave him here. I'll take good care of him and I'll figure it out. Oh, that was hard.
No, I'm sure.
I cried about all the way home. And he laid him down 3 times, anesthetized him, and would probe in those holes. And he finally, his probe hit something down on the inside of Excuse's cheek. And he got it out, and it was a piece of wood about 4 inches long and 1 inch in diameter. We had wood corrals. Excuse had been in the corral that last day where he could run around, and he obviously had run into the fence and broke a piece of wood off above his eye.
Oh, and it went into the
And it worked its way down.
Yeah.
And Dr. Rule said he should have lost his mind from pain.
Yeah.
But
he had heart.
And then but he had heart.
Yeah.
And he ran with that in there. So he got it out, and Fred left that incision open from the top one to the bottom one, and where he'd had it open to probe. And so it could continue to drain. And he said, as soon as he acts like he feels like running, you can run him. A week or 2 later, I went to a rodeo. We placed at every rodeo after that till the national finals rodeo. And I still won the world, and I was out about a month.
Wow.
And I placed at all those rodeos, I was able to keep my lead. But that's why we started the heart reward, because that was hard.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
that
for
was
sure.
hard.
Yeah, and determination and just
a love of what he was doing.
Yeah, and I think a love of you too, of who he was doing it with. I think that animals know. They really do. There's a lot to be said for that. That's a cool story. Thank you for sharing that one.
He would not pee in the trailer.
Oh, good boy.
He would not pee in the trailer. It was like a dog that was housebroke.
Yeah.
And he would go to rock in that trailer. And so we'd stop. And it usually was about every 4 to 6 hours.
Right.
And we'd stop and let him out, and he'd do his business.
Yep.
But he was glutton. He loved to eat.
Yep.
And he'd want to eat grass. Well, I knew when he rocked the trailer, he needed to go to the bathroom, so I wouldn't let him eat grass until he went.
Right.
Well, if by chance we stopped and walked him when he hadn't asked to, and I wouldn't let him eat grass, he would stretch out like he was going to go and go, and then duck and eat grass.
Oh, that's funny.
He was an amazing horse.
Yeah, he sounds like he had a lot of character.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
He was a character.
Yeah.
My brother would hold his nose shut and then let him go, and he'd curl his lip up when Rex was about 6. And I'd say, don't do that. He can't breathe. He said, it's fun. An excuse, just shake his head and curl his lip. And I think he enjoyed Rex playing with him.
I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if not, he would have probably showed him that he didn't like it. Yeah, he probably would have protested. I mean, that's the horses. They're kind of like big dogs in a sense.
Yeah, they are.
You know?
They are.
That's how I've
they have them. Feelings.
They do.
People, it's been proved that horses and even cows have feelings of love.
Mm-hmm.
They can love you. A cow can love you. It's amazing, and a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah. That's very true. I've seen it. I've witnessed it. I've never been loved by a horse or a cow, but I've had friends that have grown up, on farms and stuff, and I've seen that with them, experienced that. I had one friend who had a bottle calf that became a pet, really, in essence.
Well, Mom had a heifer that Grandpa gave her. He first gave her and Aunt Helen sows.
Uh-huh.
And Aunt Helen's sow had a whole bunch of little pigs, and Mom's sow had one. And then Grandpa was tired of having sows, so he said, I'm going to sell the pigs and give y'all each a heifer. And Mom made a pet out of hers, and she could rub that heifer's belly, and that heifer would lay down just like a pig would.
Uh-huh.
And big old heifer kept her 3 years.
Wow.
Never had a calf.
Yeah.
Mom didn't have good luck.
Yeah.
And never had a calf. And Grandpa finally says, I can't keep a barren cow. I just can't. And sold her and about killed Mom. But
Oh,
yeah, she
yeah,
could
it's tough.
rub that ever. Just go
Yeah.
out in the pasture. And the heifer would come up to her and she'd rub her belly and down she'd go.
How fun.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'll open that up
Actually,
for
I
you.
would be interested to know. And I realize, other than your time as a board member, which I believe was late 70s and to the 80s.
In the 80s.
And I realize you've kind of been away, from the rodeo business per se. You weren't hands-on, maybe. Do you see trends in, rodeo competition now that maybe, how do I put this? Maybe you're not so pleased with the way things are trending from, for instance, when you were competitive?
Well, it's become a big business.
Hmm.
And it wasn't a big business when I was going. We did it for the love of rodeo and the love of running barrels because we obviously didn't make any money. The first year I ran at the National Finals Rodeo, I had to pay $100 entry fee. I was 15, scared to death. It was my dream come true, faster than I ever dreamed it would. I won 1/4 and it paid $54. I said, we've come a long way, baby. Because if you don't know, they're winning 150 to 200,000 at the National Finals Rodeo.
Wow.
It's a big business. And I'm glad that they can, but it's also sad that they've lost some of that camaraderie.
Yeah.
Right.
And they'll haul 2 and 3 and 4 horses. When I was going, everybody had one horse. If you had a good horse that won, that's the one you hauled. You ran him all year and you ran him at the finals 10 performances. Now they've got, which good for them. I mean, but I'm not big on change and I don't want them to go backwards by any means. It's great that they're making money. Because, gosh, Napa, Idaho paid $13,000. And that was more than I won in a year. So that's a good thing. And I was a part of that.
Right.
So that makes me feel good. I just hate that it's not.
It's almost going in a direction where that's all it's about is winning money and the business side of it, and less about being there because you love and enjoy it. I'm sure some of those people do love and enjoy it, but at the end of the day, the thing that's on their mind is, when am I going to win? And
Which horse should I ride?
Yeah. And I could see.
Do they have an excuse?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But,
no pun intended.
Yeah.
I had to add that. I was surprised Robin didn't get me on that one.
I got it.
He wasn't
smirking.
I saw you, so like, if he's not going to say it, I will.
I did good on that one.
Yeah, you did.
But it's just a whole different world now.
Yeah.
But thank God for Facebook. People will criticize Facebook, but I have been able to connect with so many of my old rodeo friends.
Yeah.
And for 8.5 years, in the middle of my teaching, I quit teaching for 8.5 years, and I did corporate meeting work. I worked for corporate meeting planning companies. I would go on site and facilitate meetings and troubleshoot and work with every aspect of coordinating what needed to be done at a meeting. I still do Edward Jones summer regional meetings in June for 2 weeks. I have done that since 1999. And teaching school, I was able to do it because I was off in June. When I worked at the bank waiting on my teaching job at Fargo to open up, I took my 2 weeks vacation and worked Edward Jones. I love their meetings. But this year they sent me to Alabama. Normally I go to Oklahoma City or Tulsa because logistically it was feasible, but they sent me to Alabama. And when I looked at the sheet, it said Opelika. And I was like, Opelika, Alabama. There was a barrel racer from Opelika. She still lives there.
Oh, yeah.
We ran against each other in the 70s, and she was a good friend. And we had contacted each other on Facebook, but I was able to go visit her.
Oh, good, because you were there.
Yeah.
Huh? So you got to reconnect with her.
We spent 4 hours just
Oh, sure.
yakking and a talking.
Yeah, getting caught up.
And she has a memory that won't quit, so she remembered everybody's horse's name.
Oh, wow.
And she can tell you everything about anybody that ran when I did.
Wow.
And so that's part of what I think some of the girls are missing out on.
Yeah.
But, thank goodness for Facebook, because now I'm connected with a lot of my old rodeo friends.
Yeah, that's cool.
Male and female.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I love that.
Well, this has been great. I thank y'all for having me.
Yeah. No, thank you for coming and telling us about your career and, well, your other careers as the teacher and stuff, and talking about your experiences with your horses. I feel like that's going to resonate with a lot of people. I think there's a lot of people out there that they're going to hear your excuse and they're going to be like, that was so and so for me.
Yeah.
Whether they competed or not. I've had a bad experience with a horse and I'll never forget it. So, and I mean, I may have been different if I didn't. I think they're amazing creatures and I think they're awesome. And I commend people but mine was traumatic and they know I'm traumatized. And so when I'm around horses, I'll pet them and stuff, but they're smart and they sense it. I just don't know if I'd ever be able to get on one, but I think that it's really neat that people have those connections with horses as well as any animal. So
I didn't know the difference.
I wish I didn't.
Yeah.
I just was put on a horse when I was old enough to sit up. I rode in the front of Dad in the saddle with him when I was too little to ride by myself, and then was put on a horse as soon as they felt like I could sit up and stay on one. And because someone says, "Will you teach me to ride?" I said, "I honestly don't know how to teach you to ride. I can't tell you how I ride because I grew up doing it."
Yeah.
And there's an art to teaching someone how to ride, and I don't have it.
Well, it sounds like you have an art of training them horses how to run barrels, though. So
Yeah.
That's
I feel like everybody used to say that Excuse was a freak. And I kind of felt like, someone asked me about how I felt about being inducted. I said, I feel like it's validation that people recognize that I deserved it, because back when I was going, it was like I was young and inexperienced when it came to rodeos, and Excuse was not the normal barrel horse. And so I never felt like I got the accreditation, or
they just kind of like, oh, just by luck, kind of. Oh, you just got lucky on that
but then
one.
when
But there
I
was
got
more to it.
Peanuts and trained Peanuts, I felt like that showed everybody.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a freak thing with Excuse.
Yeah.
Because you don't get two freaks in one lifetime.
Not usually. Not like that.
And I was blessed to have another really good horse.
Yeah.
Sure.
But he was bred to run, and he was bred more for a barrel horse. And he still wasn't very big.
Yeah.
I guess I was destined to have small horses.
Well,
I trained some
big
ones, but
maybe that was just part of it. You never know.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Jeana, so much. We really appreciate your time and your talking to us about everything. And
Absolutely.
we
certainly want to thank our guests today, Jeana Day, for agreeing to come on this podcast, sharing the history of her storied past. And if you have any questions or want to make a suggestion for a podcast episode, you can email us at mr.robin@mrrobinshood.com or Mikey@mrrobinshood.com. As always, you can also reach out to Mikey or me via Podophone at 580-827-0472. If you just want to get something off your chest, we're not likely to answer because we're quickly becoming international podcast stars. Interestingly, in Guatemala.
There you go. It's always a new place.
Yeah, but we don't have the dough yet to hire staff. But you can leave a voicemail. Text us if you have a question, concern, complaint, compliment, suggestion, or whatever, just don't be a dick about it. So we'll wrap this up as we always do and remind you to stay hungry,
Stay foolish,
and
most importantly, stay weird. Bye, everybody.